wearing that uniform. End of story. End of story.
Great job, Chris and Sonia, for finding that. Thank you. I think his name is Brian Mast, M-A-S-T. I think he has some disability. I think he's missing a leg and often walks around with shorts on so as to show the artificial leg. But I did not know that he once fought in the IDF. I have met him. I have interviewed him at Fox News in my Fox days there. I did not know this about his background. It is reprehensible that he appeared on the floor of the Congress in a foreign military uniform. And you've been just as critical as others who have done that, like the fellow that appears on the show. Maverick's getting excited. There it is. Thank you again. There he is showing the leg, if you look carefully. Matt Van Dyke, who wears a Ukrainian uniform. What is with Americans who wear the military uniform of a foreign country?
Look, I don't know. The law is the law, and right now the law allows people to serve, and you can't become a non-commissioned officer or a commissioned officer, but you can serve in the army of another nation without penalty. I wish that wasn't the case. Look, I love being an American, and I will fight and die for my country. And I respect anybody who says, look, if you come to me and you say, I'm an Israeli, I will serve in my military and I'll fight and die for my country. I'm like, dude, I respect that. I may be against you. I may fight against you. I may kill you, but I respect what you're doing because you are proud of your country, just like I'm proud of my country. But you can't be proud to be an American and wear the uniform of another country. Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s son wore a Ukrainian uniform. And Bobby Kennedy was like, okay, so be it. No, Bobby, it's not okay. Your son, instead of joining the American military, felt that he had to do his military service in Ukraine, fighting alongside Nazis. No, it's not okay to wear the uniform. If you were raised in another country and you did your conscription service in another country, and then you came to America and you became an American, and you say, now I want to serve America, great, that's okay. But you can't say, I am an American, I take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and then go serve another country that falls outside the bailiwick of our Constitution. You're not serving America at that point. It's really black and white, but somehow Congress has lost the message because of Israel. That's why.
Is Benjamin Netanyahu a dead man walking, politically speaking?
I believe so. I think it's over for him. Somebody said that his popularity rating was in single digits right now.
The last poll that I saw, which was Haaretz, you know this publication, 4%. 4% approval. This makes Joe Biden's numbers look good.
Joe's looking pretty good in comparison. And this is 4% after his country was attacked.
Yes.
Normally, look at George W. Bush after 9/11. His support went way up. But here everybody blames Benjamin Netanyahu for what happened. Rightfully so. He's Mr. Security. He's the one who fell asleep at the wheel. He was on the bridge when the Titanic struck the iceberg.
Since you and I spoke last before the Thanksgiving holiday, two interesting pieces have come out, one in the BBC and one in the Financial Times. The Financial Times, I know you know this, the Financial Times reports that a half dozen female tank commanders enlisted, not commissioned, in the IDF saw suspicious activity, including a lot of drone activity in Gaza, reported it to their male commanders who poo-pooed them. The BBC, also in the Telegram, reports practice going on in Gaza going back to December of 22. That's 10 months before October 7th, of taking hostages in invading buildings. How asleep was the Netanyahu government? How incompetent was Israeli intelligence, more so than we thought when October 7th first happened?
Well, intelligence is a system. You collect, you assess, you analyze, and then you report, and then you get feedback and you start all over again. What you were talking about it's called Unit 414. It's a battalion that's in the Israeli Intelligence Collection Corps. It's primarily women. This is where the young females who join the Israeli Defense Force, who have a high IQ, they get assigned to these units. And their job is they sit in these command posts and they monitor the screens of all the cameras and the sensors that they have out there. They also are able to remote control heavy weaponry that's on towers, and so if you see suspicious action, you can take your joystick, and if they come across, you can open fire. And some of them did this. These women were reporting back for some time now that not all was good. Not everything was going well in Gaza. They said Hamas is doing rehearsals for this attack. They identified the points where Hamas was coming across. They identified the units, the special forces unit of Hamas. They identified that they were doing training in a mock-up of an Israeli kibbutz. They identified that they were doing paraglide training. And they all came back and said they're preparing for an attack. And they wrote these reports, and they went up the chain of command. Many of these girls who survived, they took heavy casualties, Judge, heavy casualties. They didn't have weapons. They weren't issued weapons. And when Hamas came across and stormed their command centers, these girls didn't have any defense. Over 20 of them were sleeping at the time. They ended up in a bunker. And they, they were, majority of them were killed. Some of them were captured. But this is what you're talking about here is an exception. This is a different unit altogether. This is a special all-female unit that they're hyping up right now. But they weren't on the front line. They were closer. They weren't attacked. They were able to respond cohesively and engage. And who knows?
Back to what Bibi and his commanders knew or ought to have known.
They knew everything. Here's the problem. They had all that information, but the men above got the reports from the women. And Israel is a very sexist society. And the men went, they're overreacting. They're not. And they didn't check on it. Or if they did it, they wrote it up and sent it up to the top. What we do know is this. On October 6th, the night of October 6th, the head of Israeli intelligence, the head of their military, people from the prime minister's office were all meeting about these reports. Because the reports are saying Hamas is getting ready to come across tonight. And they met and they met and they met and they said, Hamas would never do that. It doesn't make any sense. These people have to be wrong because we believe Hamas is committed to, taking these 20,000 work permits and getting the money and We won't make a decision tonight. And what they were being asked to do, Judge, is have everybody go on alert, to call the military and say, get everybody out of the barracks, get everybody online, stand to, get ready, bring people back, just in case. They didn't do that. They let everybody sleep, everybody stay on holiday. They didn't put a warning out at all. They said, we'll reconvene in the morning. Ooh. But when they reconvened in the morning, it was already too late. And this is criminal. And this is Netanyahu. This is, that steely-eyed commander, Secretary, Minister of Defense that's out there. I think Gallant is his name. Steely-eyed man right now, talking so brave. Dude, you didn't do the right thing. You were asleep at the wheel. All these generals that are talking tough today, where were they on October 6th, October 7th? They failed. These are losers. These are guys who sacrificed all these women who were doing their job. The Golani Brigade was on duty, thinly manned. They were overwhelmed. They fought. They lost 41 guys there on the front line. They got beat to a standstill. Beat bad. They had to retreat, withdraw. The Golani Brigade got beat because they were thinly manned. Everybody was on vacation. They knew Hamas was coming across the border. They were calling for air support. Bring in the helicopters. No, we're not going to mobilize the pilots because Hamas would never do this. The guys on the front line were screaming, it's happening now. They're coming across. Nobody did anything.
And when the Israeli military arrived, they began to kill Israelis.
Well, first of all, we have to understand that when the Israelis arrived, they were in panic because what Hamas did is achieve an absolute tactical dominance of the battlefield. They came across, they penetrated the initial lines. They knew exactly where they're going. They took out the communication. The Israelis couldn't communicate because all of the communication rooms were seized by Hamas, blown up by Hamas. They blew up the communication tower. So now they're calling on phones, cell phones. They're trying to coordinate guys who are driving on their own initiative because they can't mobilize. And people are running in and they're panicked. They're absolutely panicked. And they get there and they just start shooting. You see movement, you shoot. A lot of the Israelis that were killed early on were shot by Israeli soldiers who misidentified them as Hamas. Then as you came into the kibbutzes themselves or the military bases where Hamas has now hard pointed themselves in homes. The Israelis tried to do assaults and got whipped. Look at the casualties of the Israeli elite forces. There's Sayeret Matkal, who are our equivalent of Delta Force, lost, I think, 14 dead that day. 14 dead of the most elite commandos out there. Why? Because they rushed forward in uncoordinated fashion. They were getting whipped. So the tanks came in and they did, they sat there and they just fired on the houses, killing everybody. The Israelis were in communication with the Israeli hostages inside. The Israeli hostages inside said Hamas wants to negotiate a surrender. They want to, get us released and all that. And the Israelis went, nope, blow them up, kill them. All those people that were killed in the rave that took place, turns out a lot of them were killed by Israeli helicopters who came on scene and couldn't distinguish between Hamas and that. And so they shot everybody. They killed everybody. No, Israel panicked. The notion that the IDF is invincible was shattered that day. They turned out
can the IDF go back to the type of demolition and ethnic cleansing that it had commenced before the truce?
Well, if they start this war, they will continue to do in that route. They will try to win this conflict by doing that. But the same thing will happen. Hamas will beat them. The world will turn against them even harsher this time, because now everybody's seeing what the potential is, that there's the potential for negotiation. There's a potential for discussion. If Israel says, we don't want to do this anymore, we choose war, the world will turn against them. And in America, it's going to be difficult to maintain this. But the biggest thing is that Hezbollah isn't going to sit there and do nothing. When Hezbollah comes back into this fight, if Israel goes into Gaza, the Israelis are just going to get their butts kicked.
Do Netanyahu and his commanders understand that? Does the Israeli public understand that?
Well, the Israeli media is starting to say things about this. What I'm reporting here is what's coming from the Israeli media. They put out a thing tonight, said if we start this war, there's nothing we can do to stop Hezbollah from taking Galilee. We don't have the military force to do that. That's a big deal because that's northern Israel. Now they'll be captured by Hezbollah. And with all the Israeli forces down in Gaza getting beat, this is a bad deal. Netanyahu's fighting for his political life right now. He's fighting for his political life. He knows that his support ratings, and he also knows that right now, if he leaves office, eventually he's going to be arrested and put in jail for the rest of his life for corruption charges. And he will probably be held criminally liable for what happened on October 7th. The Israeli people will never forgive him for what he's done. And so he's a desperate man, which is the main reason why he needs to get out of this job, because everything he says, everything he does isn't for the state of Israel. It's for Benjamin Netanyahu. And people need to recognize that he cannot be allowed not only to put Israel at risk, but put the world at risk, because he wants to preserve some sort of political viability that no longer exists.
Last subject, Scott, the feelings of government actors in the region. President Erdogan of Turkey, President al-Sisi of Egypt, King Hussein of Georgia, of Jordan.
Look, the Palestinians never had a lot of support from people. There's a lot of lip service played to Palestinian state, but until Hamas launched their attack on October 7th, nobody's doing anything for a Palestinian state. Today, this has changed. And a lot of it's changed because people honestly feel revolted by what Israel did, but a lot of it's happening because Arab leaders who previously were intimidated into buying into the notion of Israeli domination of the Palestinians in exchange for economic prosperity through adherence to the Abraham Accord are saying, the political winds have changed. Israel's not as sturdy as it was. We're going to maybe take a harsher stance. Look at the debates taking place in the Egyptian parliament right now. They are hardcore anti-Israel. The king of Jordan is starting to say things. The world is coagulating into this anti-Israeli stance that America can't stand up against. The vote in the United Nations was very telling what happened in support of a ceasefire, etc. The world is against Israel right now. This is very, very dangerous for Israel. This is why Netanyahu has to go, because right now Israel needs to be worrying about its future. It's not going to beat Hamas. You can't beat Hamas. Hamas is an idea whose time has arrived. I know there's people out there, Scott, you're supporting terrorism. I don't know, is supporting Sam Adams and Paul Revere supporting terrorism? Because the British viewed them as terrorists. Correct. The Minutemen that stood up in Concord and Lexington, were they terrorists?
Menachem Begin, when he blew up the King David Hotel. 1948, the British considered him to be a terrorist, and he said one of
Absolutely.
the founders of the state of Israel. Wow.
But the Hamas right now is doing things for the Palestinian people that nobody's done for them in their history. Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, has been an Israeli shill for some time now. Fatah has given up. The only people fighting for Palestine are Hamas. And you can't, if there was an election today in the Palestinian territories, Hamas would win not only the legislature, but the presidency, because the people of Palestine are behind them now, like they've never been before. And you can't erase that. I don't know what Netanyahu thinks he's going to do. The Israeli Defense Forces so far proven incapable of defeating Hamas. And B, even if you kill the soldiers, didn't we learn anything from counterinsurgency warfare? If you kill civilians, you create more. We learned that in Iraq. For every bad guy we thought we killed, we created 20 new bad guys. We learned that against Al Qaeda. We learned that against the Taliban. This is basic military math. Israel is creating a stronger Hamas that will survive beyond this conflict. Israel's already lost this war. They just don't know it.
When we reconvene next week, we'll talk about the effect of all of this on one Joseph R. Biden. But Scott, you're a dynamo. Thank you very much for your passion, for your knowledge, and for your analysis. Deeply and profoundly appreciated.
Thank you.
Of course. Tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern, Ask the Judge. 2 o'clock Eastern, Intelligence Roundtable with Larry Johnson and Ray McGovern. And 3 o'clock Eastern, back by popular demand, Ritter's going to watch this one, Jack Devine. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.